You are watching Access LaPorte County Channel 97. Coming up next is the July 11th meeting of the Michigan City Building Corporation Board of Directors. You can find more information for this meeting at www.accesslaportecounty.org.
Thank you everyone for coming today. I'm Skylar York. I'm the Director of Planning and Redevelopment for the City of Michigan City. This is our first meeting for it's a special meeting of the Board of Directors of the City of Michigan City for the newly established Building Corporation. Today's date is July 11th, and the time is 3 p.m. I'll start the meeting. I guess I'll hand it over. Should I call a roll call, Randy? I'm not really sure how to start the first meeting.
Yeah, I can maybe start the meeting just by saying the Building Corporation was authorized by the Common Council, and it approved a resolution authorizing the creation of the Building Corporation. To that end, we prepared articles of incorporation that Skylar signed as the incorporator, and those were filed with the Secretary of State. And those listed the three of you as the initial board of directors, Nicholas Walls, Philip Blatchford, and Virginia Keating. And so at this point, I think Virginia Keating has something she would like to say in terms of her participation in the Building Corporation.
Yes, I have a conflict, okay, and it was discussed just a few minutes ago. I'm the president of the Board Works. And because your contract would come before me, I would be in a position where I would have a conflict. And so for that reason, I feel that I have to resign the shortest term
ever on any board or commission ever.
I enjoyed meeting everybody. And I wish you all luck.
And you will see her again at the Board of Works. We'll see you again at the Board of Works.
Absolutely. So with that said, I think I'm going to let you continue with the meeting. Okay, is that all right, Skylar, or did you want me to?
I know you got places to be. I know. So, I know you're a busy lady.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Very nice meeting you. Bye-bye.
We still have a quorum, and we do have an idea for a replacement. We do have I've got two other names of some folks who would be interested in serving. I just got to get back with them, just for FYI. Maybe they'll serve on the RDA as well. I know you're chuckling. I know why you're chuckling.
What's different about only having people on board?
Randy made it very clear that he wants us to have three. I'm going to try really hard.
We want three.
I'd like to have three.
But we certainly the minimum number is 3, but for purposes of legally holding a meeting, the quorum is 2.
Yes,
2 of the 3. So we can continue on with today's meeting with the understanding that the third member would be appointed soon.
Absolutely.
And pursuant to the articles and the authorization of the council, the mayor would have that appointment, just as he would for the redevelopment authority. So I can. Skylar, if you like, I can talk a little bit about the purpose of the Building Corporation.
Yes, please.
I'm assuming everybody has copies of the materials.
So maybe give us, Randy, so we'll go into purpose of the Building Corporation, functionality of it, and then maybe transition into the order of business.
Right.
While we're here today.
Right.
I think it's important for us to understand this is something new for Michigan City. It's a tool, but also could be a tool that could be used in the future as well, just like the RDA as we use it. Kind of similar, but two totally different entities, if you will.
Right. There's a specific purpose why we've done the Building Corporation now. Maybe we can get to that, but just stepping back, why the city would use a Building Corporation, like the redevelopment of this. Well, let me step back. The Redevelopment Authority and Redevelopment Commission have a relationship. The Redevelopment Commission utilizes the ability of the Redevelopment Authority to enter into leases and issue lease bonds, and that's a financing technique that the city has used with great success, getting better interest rates in the market. So the Building Corporation is very similar to that, and if you're familiar with how schools are financed in Indiana, probably 95% of the schools that are financed in Indiana are financed with Building Corporation financings. and that is because of the state's constitutional debt limit. The Constitution limits the debt limit of governmental units to 2% of assessed value. That's been modified by statute downward, and that basically provides for a small amount of general obligation debt that can be issued by cities, towns, counties, and school corporations for governmental purposes. And so how governmental units, just lump them together, how governmental units finance big projects, schools, for example, counties and jails is another example. Cities use building corporations for, police stations, fire stations, city hall projects, things of that nature, big projects. They use the building corporation and the leasing mechanism. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But so the purpose of a building corporation is basically to act on behalf of, under Indiana law, the governmental unit, which would be here the city, or the redevelopment commission. And we're particularly interested in the building corporation assisting with an economic development project that would be utilizing the building corporation lease structure. So with that, then the unit here, the city, creates the building corporation, which they've done. The articles have been filed. And so then you would take some steps today. We have 3 resolutions. 1 relates just organizational items we'll get through. 2 relates to the lease itself and the project. And 3 relates to the leased property, what you end up leasing. And so we can talk more about that. I'll just stop. Any questions in terms of what the role of the building corporation is? You can't do anything, I should say too, you can't do anything without the city council acting or the redevelopment commission. And frankly, given the redevelopment statute, the redevelopment commission cannot enter into a lease either with the building corporation or the redevelopment authority without city council approval. So it's not as if, you can act as a rogue board and do anything, untoward. If the city didn't want you to act, you wouldn't, then we wouldn't be sitting here, if that were to be the case. And so that's why we go first to the city to get authorization to establish the building corporation. Similar that was done years ago with the redevelopment authority. There's a reason why the redevelopment authority, keep dodging around, but as we get into the project, I'll explain why we can't use the redevelopment authority and we're using the building corporation. There's a reason why.
Randy, in the future, so today the building corporation is acting on the behalf of the redevelopment of the redevelopment commission. In the future, should the city want to do something, the building corporation could act on behalf of council, etc. Should they want to do that in the future?
Right. The examples for cities and towns. If cities are building a new city hall, if you were to replace the city hall someday, big project, expensive, you probably couldn't finance it with general obligation bonds of the city because of the constitutional debt limit. So you use the lease financing mechanism, and leases are not subject to the constitutional debt limit. Some people get nervous and wring their hands, well, should we be issuing bonds that are above that debt limit? Financially,
There's quite a few of them in Indiana.
well, no, exactly. That constitutional debt limit's been in place since forever, and you couldn't finance public infrastructure if you were only limited to the general obligation bonds, and the markets recognize that. So the lease mechanism in Indiana is very accepted, certainly legally, but more importantly, financially in the marketplace. Indiana lease transactions are very secure given the way they're structured, and we'll talk about the structure here in a little bit. So it's very common to use the lease mechanism for bigger projects, and that's where the city would use or could use you for larger projects where they needed to do a lease financing. They would involve, and it didn't involve redevelopment. Certainly, the city has done redevelopment projects where they've used the leasing mechanism between the redevelopment authority and redevelopment commission. But if they were to do a city hall project, or again, police and fire stations,
Garage, something like that.
parking garage, or some big municipal project that, and a lot of municipal projects can be done as redevelopment projects, but there are some that don't fit. Either because of geography or because of the nature of the project. And so you would just look to do that as a city building corporation lease financing. And the role of the building corporation, if you do a lease financing, like the redevelopment authority, you would issue bonds on behalf of the city, and the bonds would be paid for from the lease rentals that are being paid by the city to the building corporation. In the transaction we're going to talk about in a few minutes, you are not issuing bonds, but you are entering into a lease with the redevelopment commission. Those lease rentals will be used to pay the bonds. In the project we'll talk about in a minute, it's the city issuing the bonds. And it may, before we even get into the resolutions, it may make sense just to go through the structuring. I think I see you have it, that one page, just to talk about this project and.
What's the name on top of it?
Station block fund structure, IC 36.
I must have eaten mine because I had one. Oh, thank you. Hi.
It came back.
Yeah, I have it here. I don't know what I did with it. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Alan. So just, to look at this, and we talked about this with the council and the redevelopment commission, so they've heard this as well. But this is the station block project. And so there are two things happening, and Alan can jump in, or Skylar can jump in as well, in terms of their knowledge and understanding of it. The city, well, I like to step back a lot. Some years ago, the city did a financing to help pay for double tracking, right? The city of Michigan City issued bonds. I think the county paid some cash. LaPorte County, St. Joseph County issued bonds. The city of South Bend issued bonds. It was all basically to help provide the local match for NICD to secure a lot of federal funding, and I think some state funding as well, that allowed double tracking to happen. And so that's happening now, as I'm sure all of you know. And so as an outgrowth of that, there was the parking garage project that NICD required here, and you tell me if I'm bumbling.
No, you're doing good.
But the parking garage project's there. As part of that, then the city went out with an RFP to develop the mixed use.
We had an opportunity to take. I'll jump in.
Go ahead.
So originally it was just a station. It was just a station and a parking garage that the city was. We had already agreed to manage and basically allow it to be built on land that we had purchased and provided to NICD. With the incentive that was provided from, so there was 10 million from the federal government that was offered, and then there was 6 million from 6 or 7 million from the state through the Indiana Finance Authority and the RDA. So we said, well, why just build a garage? The garage doesn't really provide the economic impact that we're looking for, and we have this whole city block. Hence, we went back to the Federal Transit Authority and asked if we could do a joint project, and they did allow us to do a joint project. It will be the first joint project in, I think, all of Indiana and probably this area's region. They allowed us to do that. At that point in time, they allowed us to go out to RFP and to really go out to take the 16 million and try to flip that into an incentive to incentivize a larger, more robust economic development project that really was more impactful than a simple garage. So that's kind of how we arrived. We went out to RFP. We selected a developer. There was a selection process. We selected a developer. The developer is Flaherty and Collins out of Indianapolis. And now we're to the point where we're here.
Right.
Yes. So that's a lot of the history of where we got to where we're at now.
And so the parking garage will be built. There is, and as part of that, then there's the mixed use building. And so the incentive that the city offered the developer was an economic development financing, utilizing the increment that would be generated from the project itself, and then tax increment that would be generated from the project, as well as tax increment from the northern area and the southern area, the north side area and the south side area. And with all of that, then the project agreement was signed, and we moved forward. So we're at the point of beginning to start the approval process. The Economic Development Commission meeting is set for Thursday. Redevelopment will take its first steps on Monday, and the Common Council will be acting as well. So this structure represents the bond incentive that is being provided to the developer, to Flaherty and Collins. And so it involves the city issuing bonds to the bond market under the Economic Development Statute, and the city is, again, under the statute, the issuer of the bonds. It's not the Redevelopment Commission, it's not the Building Corporation. Those bond proceeds then would be loaned to you as the Building Corporation. And then you would provide, through an agreement with the developer, which will be a Flaherty and Collins entity, you would provide that as a loan to the developer. The developer will use those bond proceeds to construct the mixed-use building. It may use some of the money for the parking garage as well. The money's fungible.
The way to look at this, this is the end result. It took us a long time to get to this, but the way to look at this is that we're looking at about roughly a $98 million project, of which Michigan City is going to contribute on top of everything else we've done on top of the land, $18.5 million. How Flaherty and Collins choose to spend that, whether they put it all in the garage, whether they put it in mixed use, whether they put it in both, which is what will happen, that's their call, and we stayed out of that.
Yeah. So those bonds will be issued, developer gets access to the money. The bottom half of this, the lease, is the way the bonds get repaid. And so that's where the Building Corporation comes in. You are authorized under the redevelopment statute to act as a lessor to the Redevelopment Commission. So you enter into a lease with the Redevelopment Commission. That lease provides the mechanism by which the Redevelopment Commission can pay the rent payments. Those rent payments flow back up to the bondholders. The bonds will be sold out into the market, and because they're being sold to the market, they need to have security to be able to produce the lowest possible interest rate to the community, or to the city as the issuer. And so those rent payments, you'll see the asterisk and the explanation below. The station block TIF will be from the project itself. Primarily from the mixed-use facility. We don't anticipate the garage generating any increment, but the mixed-use building will generate the increment. The city's municipal advisor, Baker Tilly, which is well-versed in all of this, worked with the developer to determine the amount of taxes that are expected to be generated. What will the assessed value be of that mixed-use building? There is some history around the state now, because there have been projects that Flaherty and other developers have been involved with in the state, similar to this, not always this size. Some have been smaller. In fact, this may be the largest actually, but at least there's a history in terms of gauging what the assessed value will be. In addition to that increment, that tax increment, and when I say tax increment, are you familiar with what it is? I mean, yeah, it's just the incremental taxes being generated from the increases in assessed value. Sorry,
I appreciate any detail.
Yeah.
From public too.
I know you've heard it, and I know you've heard it, but I'm happy to repeat
Appreciate
it.
any detail, Randy. Thanks a lot.
So that's the tax increment that would make up the lease rental payment. But to be able to go into the market, I use this example with the council at a council meeting. If you go to the bank with a mortgage or asking for a loan, a mortgage, whatever, if you've either got a wealthy relative that's willing to co-sign, or if you've got a lot of money in the bank, you're going to get you should be able to get a better deal from the bank. Your interest rate might be a little bit lower, your terms might be a little bit better, and so here. What we use under the state law is a tax backup. And the Redevelopment Commission will have the tax backup in addition to all of the tax increment. And it's the tax backup that provides the lowest interest rate, because the bondholders know that they are secure. If all the worst possible things happen, there's no increment being generated anywhere in the city, which is almost an impossibility given how taxes work. The tax backup would be there.
Also add in the guaranteed payment from Flaherty and Collins.
I was going to talk about.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It just kind of fits into.
Yeah.
So there's another surety, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. From the city standpoint, there's another element of security. So it's the commission has its tax backup. The increment that'll be generated by the developer's project, they are willing to provide a taxpayer guarantee. So they will agree that the minimum taxpayer amount that will be generated from that project, if it isn't generated, they will pay it. They'll make up the difference. And they've done that, Flaherty's done that in other projects, and I can think of one project where they've actually written checks to, cover the difference when the assessed value didn't pan out the way it was predicted to pan out. It's in everybody's best interest, it's in their interest, it's in the city's interest for the assessed value to be more or less on. And like I said, Baker Tilly has done that. They work with the assessor and assessors in different communities, so they have a good understanding of what
It was
that
an
would be.
important thing with the redevelopment commission
Right.
to have that. So when they were willing to do that, it
provided the additional security. No, absolutely, right. And that property tax agreement, that acts like a lien, a property tax lien. So it actually, even if it assessed and they didn't pay their taxes, that agreement would be like it becomes a property tax lien. It's in front of mortgages. It's basically as if you didn't pay your real estate taxes on your house. It just jumps right to the front of the line. So that does provide good security in terms of the TIF that is expected to be generated from the mixed use project. So that, in essence, is the structure of the financing. I'll stop again and happy to answer any questions you guys might have about the structure of the project and the
This
financing.
helps, thanks.
Sure.
It's a visual representation,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. I didn't include this in the packet, but and I probably should have. But I know I sent this to Alan. There's basically when you look at there's three things in terms of approvals. There's first of all the TIF areas. Because this project will draw TIF from the north and TIF from the south, it becomes a convenient time to talk about consolidating the TIF areas. And so the Redevelopment Commission is expected to consider that next week. What consolidation will allow you to do, the Redevelopment Commission, it'll allow, to the extent this project does what everybody expects it will do, that it really becomes the catalyst for development in the northern, in the north area in the city. Downtown part, it will allow you, if there's excess TIF up here and you have a project in the south, it will allow you to more easily use the that TIF down there. And so consolidating really makes a whole lot of sense, and a lot of communities are doing it.
We also need to do it because of the bond structure. When Randy started out, when we bonded originally for the double track, we actually bonded out of north-south. North-south are paying that bond when really our project is in the north, and we want to make sure that with being, we're okay, no one's saying, but we want to make sure that
If legislation
should legislation change,
Right.
should something happen in the future, there's no chance of payback or things
Right.
of that nature.
Right.
And we
Right.
want to make sure that we're staying in check with
Right.
really the geolocation of funds, if you will.
The important thing to remember, the reason why we did that is clearly this project does not just benefit the north.
Absolutely.
The
Right.
project benefits
Right.
all of Michigan City,
We-
all of the region.
We made our appropriate findings at the time,
Yeah.
and which is required of us, and I believe we're still good. But should legislation
No,
change?
it is. No, absolutely. When you step back, and from our standpoint, the legal analysis, we were extremely comfortable that the double tracking itself and this project as well are both transformational projects for the city. And so we could make that argument that certainly the south side TIF area is extremely benefited by both of these projects. There may be a project in the future, again, going back to the example, if you start generating a lot of increment in the north, there may be a project in the south that could be benefited by using some of that TIF, public infrastructure, whatever the project is. But that project may not be transformational in the sense that it's big like these two are.
Needed.
And so if you don't consolidate, you may not satisfy the legal analysis to be able to use the excess north TIF in the south side area. These two projects are transformational, and we do believe legally we have the ability to draw on both. But going forward, it would be better, as Skylar said, to put yourself in a position where you're on all fours to be able to use it. So that's one set of approvals. The second set is the lease, and so you have the lease here. There's a resolution approving it. The Redevelopment Commission has to approve it. The Common Council has to approve it. They've already approved the building corporation creation, but they have not yet approved the lease. That's coming down the line. The last set in the last body involved is the Economic Development Commission, because the Economic Development Statute requires that this commission that's created under that statute serve as a sounding board for the Common Council. So the EDC will actually hold a public hearing on Thursday and consider a resolution for adoption of approving of the project and the financing and the issuance of bonds by the city. So that's kind of the 3 stages of approval.
Would you like me to make copies for him?
If you guys want to take that,
Would you guys like
sure.
copies of this?
I would love one.
Why don't you make this copy? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just,
I'm better with pictures.
yeah, no, I thought about it this morning. I didn't include it. I probably should have, but I'm more.
Have you told them about yet too, that in the event that the city or the redevelopment commission, or the developer defaults on anything, they're both personally liable?
Well, that was question number 1.
Have insurance for
It's
this.
9.25 each. So.
Yeah, no, Alan isn't right on that.
All right, guys. Enough.
It
We
is.
got one already. Got 2 more off.
No, and that's right. Yeah, that's true. And as in any financing, none of the council members themselves, the mayor, the redevelopment commission members, none of the individuals are responsible for anything, right? And the trust indenture, the loan agreement, there's language in those documents that say that. So I think if you want to keep moving along, there are 3 resolutions in front of you, and we could probably take them one at a time. And once we do the first one, I'll stop talking. Whoever's president then can run the balance of the meeting. So,
Thank you.
2023-01 is the initial resolution. We had in the first whereas clause, we had a blank in there because we had, I don't know why, but we had an issue with the filing. So I can report it is now, the building corporation was legal as of yesterday. So we are, so that will be July 10th. The articles were filed. I think you guys have copies of them. I think I did not bring the certificate. I will email those. I will email you the certificate and the file stamped copies. I didn't. I think I left them on my desk. So I'll email those because I think I have your emails from the email Debbie sent. So I'll just reply all to that.
Okay.
So you have them. The bylaws you have the articles as they were.
Articles, yeah.
Yeah. And the bylaws are there. Basically the articles and bylaws are the bumpers for the building corporation. They're your governing documents. You wouldn't expect them to change. The articles did lay out the initial board, which included Virginia. That's why we had to go through the exercise of having her resign from the board at the meeting. So we did that. The third resolution indicates there's no members, and that's an archaic not-for-profit requirement. The not-for-profit statute, up till probably the late 80s maybe, or 90, I think it's 91. I think the law changed in 91. All not-for-profits had to have members, and the members were almost like shareholders, so stockholders. The state saw the wisdom of not needing that, and so all not-for-profits since 91 have the option of not having members, and most not-for-profits avail themselves of that. Frankly, I did a fair amount of work with not-for-profits in the early 90s because they all wanted to get away from that, because if you have members, you have big quorum requirements. So anyway, so the fourth item is election of officers. So what we probably could do, there are 2 of you. I guess what I might suggest is one of you be the president, one of you be the secretary treasurer, because those are the 2 people. I'm hoping we'll have the third person before we get to the bond closing. But
We're going to try very hard. Alan, me, and Bill will try very hard to get I think we have a person. So.
but the people that will sign documents will be the president and the secretary primarily. The vice president is there in the event, one of the other two isn't available, that would be the second person to sign. So,
Yeah, Phil and I talked about that, and with him working in LA County, it might be better, since I'm here full-time now,
yeah.
that I be the president, and
Okay.
Secretary.
I think secretary makes sense.
I think that makes sense to me as well.
So
And then,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Because whoever comes on board will be learning, so a VP slot would be perfect for that.
Yeah.
Because you could sign, I could sign, and,
Yeah.
we're golden on that, within a 1 week period for sure. and
Absolutely.
Normally within a 1 day period. Debbie knows how to find us.
So you would be president, and
I
you
know
would be
how to
secretary.
handle.
Keeper.
And we, we have a calendar. It's changed quite a bit in the last few months, but I think we're perilously close. In fact, by tomorrow morning, I'll have circulated a calendar to both of you that I think will be hopefully the final version.
Yes.
So we'll have a good, hopefully as we move forward, we'll have a sense of when the bonds will close, and so we'll know a couple of months out so we'll check on vacations and all of that.
Yeah, that really shouldn't be an issue.
And my goal is to have someone that would serve on this board as well as maybe the RDA as well, because I think it's important to be fully board, have a full.
Right.
And I'm just thinking, because they're so similar in nature, that serving on the RDA board is an automatically good feed into the building corp.
Right.
Yes.
They're very similar in what they do.
Yeah.
The RDA is limited specifically to the redevelopment commission. The building corp is either the city or the redevelopment commission. And frankly, probably 9 times out of 10, the building corps are being used in connection with city projects. This one's a little bit weird, and I'll talk more about that. But the balance of these 5, 6, and 7 in this resolution really deal with the fact that you are
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Do we have to vote on anything?
We'll vote on this resolution
Got
in
it,
a minute.
got it.
Yeah.
Well, I meant all officers were good.
Yeah, I think, because this is like one of the resolutions of the,
Thank you.
the 5, 6, and 7, you are a not-for-profit corporation. You're incorporated as a not-for-profit corporation. We don't anticipate there being any other filings to be made. Because you act as an on behalf of entity of the city and the redevelopment commission, you are treated as if you were a 501c4 under the federal tax code. So we don't have to file anything with the IRS to secure that status because of your role. So that's basically it. With that, I think we would just need a motion and a second, and then approval. And
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2023-01, resolutions of the initial meeting of the Board of Directors of the City of Michigan City Building Corporation.
And I'll second it.
I guess all in favor. Okay. So with you being the president, I would just turn the meeting over to you. I'll explain things, but the next resolution will be 02.
Okay.
And if you like, I can
Why
speak.
don't you run through your Tracy?
Yeah, okay.
You do everything first.
Two is the way we are able to create the leasing mechanism, and if you've read the resolution, it kind of goes through what we're talking about. The project is the station block. The anticipated bond amount is $22 million that the city would issue. They're taxable bonds. There's a reference to taxable. Sometimes people catch that. Well, wait a minute, I thought cities did tax-exempt bonds. Because they're economic development revenue bonds, and because the developer's providing that taxpayer guarantee, they have to be issued as taxable bonds. They can't be tax-exempt. So the interest rate will be a little bit higher than taxable tax-exempt bonds, but not appreciably higher. Unfortunately, as you know, all interest rates have gone up recently. So if we had issued these bonds last fall, we would, but we obviously weren't in that position to do that. So,
Not yet.
So what this provides for is we would have a lease, and to have the lease, there has to be property that you can lease to the redevelopment commission. And so the anticipated leased property here, and you can just go right to Exhibit A, is Michigan, a portion of Michigan Boulevard. And we typically do this because it's easy. It's a street. It's not going anywhere. The bonds will be rated by the rating agency. I think Standard & Poor's probably will be the rating agency that's used. I think that's who's rated your bonds previously.
Yep, we've met them.
And so Standard & Poor likes streets because the one risk in a lease financing, if you don't have something to lease, the redevelopment commission can't make a payment, and that's the difference between a GO bond, unlimited GO bond, and a lease. The obligation to pay the bondholder is only if the lease is in place. So if you leased a building and the building blew up, you wouldn't have anything to lease. So that's why if you're doing a building as a leased asset, there are all sorts of insurance requirements, rental interruption insurance for a period of years to kind of cover that. In this case, we lease a street, and the lease itself has substitution language. So if something bad ever happened to Michigan Boulevard, the city and the building corporation particularly would be obligated to replace the leased asset with a different street, and the city will, signs on to that as well.
And it also doesn't preclude us from fixing, repairing, things of that
Doing
nature.
anything.
Obviously,
Yeah.
that's the reason for leasing the street is
Right.
we're always making improvements to it.
And so the portion of Michigan Boulevard really becomes an engineering math question. The value of this portion of Michigan Boulevard is effectively close to the value of the lease rental payments. And so that's how we determine, going from the intersection at East 4th Street to the intersection at Mott's Parkway.
I basically had the city engineer give us an estimate of what it would cost to construct that portion of road, and it ends up being much more. It's like $37 million if we had to, because it's a double lane.
Right.
It's a rather large road, and to reconstruct it, it's worth X, so
Yeah.
it made sense. And it was one long stretch rather than trying to find 6 different portions of road that equaled the lease, so this makes sense.
So that's resolution 02. You're basically, and the city, either through the Board of Works or the City Council, will adopt a similar resolution authorizing the transfer of Michigan Boulevard. So technically, during the term of the financing, the building corporation will own that strip of Michigan Boulevard. It gives you no rights, so you can't put up a toll booth. And the lease, provides for that. That basically the city will continue to act as if it were the owner, right? And as Skylar said, any repairs or whatever, it's on the city, insurance, everything that the city normally does with the road, they'll continue to do. This is just a financing lease to provide that leasing mechanism. So, any questions?
Thank you for that explanation. I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2023-02 to transfer property from the city to the Michigan City Building Corporation.
I will second it. Any nays? No. Seems familiar, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah,
It's
because
eerily
We
familiar.
spent that, what, 3
Several
years,
years, yeah.
5 years,
Yeah.
whatever it was.
The third resolution actually approves the form of lease. So the lease was in your packet, and it approves the loan agreement, which is in your packet as well. And so, look what appeared in my pile, my station black chart. I'll give this back to you.
Here's your property.
And so this resolution, again, the whereas clauses go through the history, if you've read it, or the projected future, if you will, in terms of what's expected to happen. To make the lease financing work, there has to be a lease, and so this document, this resolution approves the form of the lease, and the lease itself, again, provides for I think we have in the lease 24 million approximately for the bonds. We may end up in the bond ordinance, I think we were using 22 million, talking with Andy, but I have to confirm that with him. The lease is for a term of 25 years. That's the maximum amount of time that the increment can be collected for the project. particularly from the station block. The increment that's being generated from the station block, that can be for 25 years. The balance of the increment from the north area and the south area, those areas expire at their own time, right? Some of them expire probably in the next 10 years, portions of those areas. So as those areas were created, they have their own expiration dates.
This will be its own
Allocation
area.
Right, so the station block will have 25 years. And again, Baker Tilly has projected the increment that'll be generated not only from that 25-year allocation area, but also the entirety of the north and south, and has taken into account all of the various expirations. The coverage on the increment is high. I mean, it approaches 200%.
Yeah, yes.
And goes higher than 200 in certain cases. So so there's a lot of increment there, and that you would use all of the increment before you would get to, and the taxpayer guarantee that's we talked about before you would ever get to a tax levy. So it is. I mean, it's the coverage. It starts out at like 230%, goes up to 321 in 1 year. As the areas start to drop off, it goes down to about 147. But those calculations assume no growth.
Yeah, that's no more development.
No more development in the city at all. It takes
Status quo.
it takes a snapshot of what's in the city today and assumes no growth, which obviously is not particularly realistic, but it's a very conservative approach. So
The rating agencies like that.
Yeah.
We try to be as conservative as we can.
In regard to the lease, I was trying, you mentioned a 25-year lease term.
Yes.
I was trying to find what the lease term was when reading through it. Unless it's worded oddly, I couldn't.
It is.
Oddly for me, not necessarily.
Yeah. So
legally.
it's in section 1 where it says.
I've got it right there.
Yeah. Term of the lease shall be 25 years.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I actually was going to speak to section 2. The maximum lease rental is $2,750,000. But what I also wanted to say, at the top of page 3 in section 2A, there's a paragraph that says after the sale of the bonds, the rental shall be reduced. So the idea is that these are maximum parameters, but once the bonds are sold and we know the exact interest rate, the lease term and the lease rental will be, the rental would be reduced to match the debt service. The term is 25 years. I think the anticipated term of the bond is probably 25 years at this point. So we may not reduce the term, but we will reduce the lease rentals to match. And the balance of the lease really speaks to, there's the substitution language in section 4 that the rating agencies like, so that if for whatever reason something happened to Michigan Boulevard, the city would replace it with another street of equal value. All of the insurance, everything that's here, the city is required to maintain all of that. Like I said, they act as the owner during the term of the lease. There's an option to purchase. In the event that these bonds are paid off early, this lease would end. So technically it would be an exercise by the commission to purchase the land, which would, that purchase price you would use then to pay off the bonds. It's possible 10 years down the road, if interest rates drop, the bonds could be refunded, and so there would be a refunding.
That was one of the questions I got. Can we refinance, things of that nature?
Yes.
And I said, yes, we do. This works the same as all of our other
Exactly,
typical bonds.
right.
Yeah.
I use 10 years because that's the typical in the municipal world. Bondholders like to have a period where they can't be bought out. And so it's typically 10 years. Sometimes you see deals where it drops to 8 or so, but it's typically 10 years. If you had anything below 10 or 9, 8, if you drop below that or try to drop below that, the interest rate on the bonds would go up because the bondholder would want to be paid more. But, so that's the lease. The other document that this resolution approves is the loan agreement. And this is the agreement between the city and the building corporation. So as on the diagram, the city issues its bonds. It loans the proceeds to you as the building corporation. There will be a funding or financing agreement where you will provide the money to the developer. But the payment, other than the taxpayer guarantee that the payment will come from the lease that we just talked about, and that just works back up. So I said we can't use the redevelopment authority here, and it's because of the relationship between the city and this is an economic development financing. We need to have the building corporation in this sort of linchpin rather than the redevelopment authority. The redevelopment authority can't easily, frankly, I shouldn't even say easily, just can't fulfill the obligations in this structure that they can in a redevelopment financing. And the third paragraph of the resolution basically authorizes any member of the board to sign any documents. The lease, we're not signing, we'll sign the resolutions today, but we won't sign the lease or the loan agreement. Neither have been approved by the city council yet. We wouldn't sign the lease until it's approved by the city council. The loan agreement will be signed as part of the closing documents, which I think, somewhere in October is kind of where we're targeting right now. It's a little incumbent upon the developer telling us they're ready to go on the mixed-use building. But, so that's the third resolution. Again, happy to answer questions.
I don't have any questions.
Neither do I, so.
A lot of boilerplate.
It's similar to other.
It's not, you didn't use artificial intelligence for this, right?
No.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2023-03, forms of a lease and loan agreement.
I'll second it. Any nays? No? Approved.
So there's a lot here. This is essentially all of the actions that we would expect you to have to take. I won't guarantee there isn't something that pops up later, but right now, you approve the lease, you approve the loan agreement, you're organized. We do have to find the third member, and you've authorized the acceptance of the property from the city, and the city will take action to approve that at a later date as well. And so we wouldn't expect there have to be a formal meeting, but as I said, as we get closer, at some point Debbie will be contacting you probably in early August, I think the way the calendar is. I think we have the council considering those resolutions at their first August meeting. They would approve the lease then, and once the lease is approved, you can sign it, the redevelopment commission can sign it. Actually, no, the redevelopment commission has to have their hearing. So the council will approve it at their first meeting in August. The redevelopment commission will meet on August 14th. And at that point, you guys can sign it and the redevelopment commission can sign it. So Debbie will be contacting you, either just before the 14th or just after to sign it.
Okay.
We'll poll and see what days work for everybody.
Yeah, but you don't need a formal meeting. You can just, if you can't come in at the same time, you both can pop in. And then the other thing would be the bond closing itself, which, as I said, will be later in October. At that point, there'll be a series of documents to be signed, and so Debbie will make arrangements with you guys. Again, no formal meeting. You can come in individually if you like, and do that then.
I need you to get something signed. There you go. Right there. It says
Resolution.
You
signed.
need to sign the first resolution?
You can sign them all now. They've adopted all of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what she was trying.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what she was mumbling.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
I was going to, just didn't get there yet.
I didn't know where they were. I knew you had them, so I knew we'd get them signed. But.
You won it. Good job, Debbie.
What's going on?
Colonel Blake and radar on that.
Yeah.
I saw the little stickies, so I was going to say
Strict
something.
about it.
Especially with the red stickies, that's definitely.
So these are the ones to be signed later.
Later,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Angry stickies, that's what I call them.
And then Debbie will just scan and send it to her. Thank you.
Should I white out Virginia on here?
No, that's fine. Yeah. That's okay.
good on those. Debbie, they're going right back in here. I should get on to me if I take them in my office.
Any other questions for me, or, I don't know if there's anything else to add.
There's still, I'll just give you guys an update on the project, maybe, just real quickly, still moving forward.
Good. I'm glad you
Yeah, absolutely. Just start there.
Now we signed papers.
We're good. No,
Should have heard that first.
Maybe I should have gave that update first. You will probably schedule for the garage is scheduled to break ground in first of August. You'll probably see, I think, 2 cranes are going to go up. That's what I'm told. They've already established a office space here in the Old Moose. So that's where Flaherty Collins will be based out of for the next 2 years during the construction build.
That'd be nice for him.
Absolutely, a little bit of money for we have established relationships with where the staging areas are going to be for the garage. The garage will be built first we're obligated to provide that garage in a certain time frame. We have organized all of our interim parking at this time, so we've really met all of the FTA requirements to date. We are waiting on final NEPA approval for our mixed-use project, and then final, there's some IDEM things we're working through as well, finalizing those, and then there's a few things locally we got to do. And then after that, the goal is to transition quickly into building our other mixed-use project. So that's kind of a little update. Everything is on track, literally. Also, Nick D is on track as well. I hear they're going to try to start running trains from in the near future. So that's very exciting.
The track must have been testing.
It's very exciting. We've provided them some interim parking as well. Not obligated to do that, but we did do that, just as being good partners because they are a partner of ours. Any questions about the project you guys are curious about? Good. Okay. We're still
Just exceptional time to be involved here with what's happening, and I think it's going to be utilized as a framework for other projects in other places, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I might just add to that. Keep in mind that the goal with this is to look toward the. We talked about no growth, basing these off of no growth. I highly suspect you're not going to have that. I highly suspect that this project will beget other projects, and I think you're already seeing some of those seeing property change hands, especially south of 11th Street. I think you're going to see some other projects come into this area. And keep in mind, we have a brand new transit development district that's been established that took effect as of July 1st, so it's brand new, which is basically like a super TIF. So we have that in place now. There are just a lot of opportunities around within a quarter mile of this station that really are poised to benefit from the development. So with that,
If there is no growth, you will be able to observe Skylar and May holding hands jumping off the top of the garage.
I will
But it's
not.
only 3 floors.
What gets lost, and I mean, it's kind of made a big splash, but I don't know if the local media really, at least living in South Bend, it got picked up, but the amount of federal investment into this double tracking project is incredible. I mean,
Absolutely.
Unprecedented, right?
yeah, no, it's
Everyone wants this to happen, so.
I think federal and then also
It's a
state.
state, right.
You have an
Yeah.
unprecedented amount of, this is one of the largest tax credit projects pretty much ever awarded in the state. So I'm pretty positive, if not
What
the
I
biggest.
found humorous about the whole thing was just everybody was focusing on those federal funds. Well, if we can get this much, then you get this much, and you pay this much, and there was all this bouncing
One of
around.
the things too, people at the state level, is there's been no better cheerleader for this project than the governor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
He
great.
has pushed things through.
Mhm.
Problems that we've had have mysteriously disappeared.
Mysterious?
That's what it takes at that level.
He's joking.
No, it's been a great. This is a very complicated project, but it's sure it's very exciting to be a part of it. And thank you guys for for doing this, for being on the Building Corporation. I appreciate it. Randy, is there anything else that we need to do?
No, I mean, I'll leave it with, you have my email and contact from Debbie being on the email. Alan, I mean, obviously, if there's questions that you guys have that you didn't think about until you go home, feel free to email.
Is there anything that you, well, I guess I could ask you after but is there anything that you want to stay, do you want to stay in tune with the EDC things that are happening? How involved you can let us know?
Well, I think just at least information.
Okay,
You
okay,
know,
okay.
Just copy them and everything.
Yeah, this is something new for me and new for us, so let's, I don't want to like, just go, thanks and see ya. I think it's,
Nice.
yeah.
It'd be good to stay in the loop, because I said you'll be signing the lease, there'll be documents later. Thinking about this being a public formal meeting, you do need a motion to adjourn and be done.
Mhm. Well, yes. Motion to adjourn. And a second.
Thank
No
you.
nays either.
So what
Debbie
we
would
do?
be doing the minutes, and she would say, wait a minute, it was never